I'm seeing the agenda.
Welcome, everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 17th of December, 2025, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider office hours. SIG Cloud Provider is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which can be summarized as please treat everyone as you would expect to be treated, or explicitly so, please be kind to each other. And if you'd like to talk, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Alrighty, so um, I would invite everyone to add themselves to the attending list if they would like to, but it is not necessary. Although it does help us to kind of understand who's been coming to the meetings and how popular they are. Uh, I'll give a little chance for sub-projects to give updates here. Does anyone have a sub-project update that they would like to share with us? Okay.
I know we just have crickets, 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 and sorry for joining late, but
That's
I
okay.
do think that we hopefully can at least hear from uh, our crow friends, and I see Walter on the call, so perhaps we have other sub-project updates.
Yeah, I mean, no,
I
no
could,
pressure,
I
for
could,
anyone.
yeah, I could just drop a quick one. So Crow is continuing to iterate toward feature complete. We are right now have a patch release of 7 out. The last two major features are the two that we've been discussing. So collections, which is like for loops or groups of things. So that is right now in dev test. We are hoping we're hoping to cut a release with collections before the end of the year. That is a maybe a stretch, given that it is kind of we're barreling into the US holidays, but we'll see. And then after that is all about version control and rollouts, which we have at least two distinct proposals around and would love community feedback and input on that. We'll be discussing that primarily, starting in the new year. Um, and we'll look to getting that done as kind of the last initial set of the features that we had described as being feature complete. Um, that's my short synopsis, Walter. Uh, I was going to mention the version control, which you've already done, but I was going to suggest that I think it would be a good thing if we actually linked the two proposals you mentioned in the agenda here. I can do that. I will find that and link that.
Okay. Does anybody else have, first of all, thank you, Jesse. It's cool to kind of cool to hear what's going on with Crow. Does anybody else have updates that they wanted to share? Yeah, Nolan, please, or Walter, sorry.
I'm surprised. Jesse is being a little modest, so I'm going to announce for Jesse. um, it is worth noting with the Crow that not only is this now SIG Cloud Provider, but even though Crow is not yet at what we're quite yet at what we call our first stable release, uh, Amazon has now announced it as a supported product. So I believe it is now officially what's it? AKS. I'm forgetting the name. I'm sorry, Jess.
EKS.
Sorry, EKS.
Capabilities.
Capabilities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
thank you. I typically in public forums like this, I typically don't talk about product things, but it is interesting. And I think, Walter, to your point, it kind of underlines our commitment to Crow to include that in capabilities, which is yeah, it's a new feature in EKS. And
maybe signals to the community that we're here for the long haul, which I know our other friends are as well. So it's mostly us kind of acknowledging that people are really excited about this project and also underlining our support for it.
Yeah. So
Yeah, thanks for calling it out.
Awesome. Yeah. Very cool to hear, and like nice to see these projects kind of making their way forward and everything. All right.
And congratulations, by the way. That is fantastic. And it makes the whole ecosystem better when we have big providers choosing to lean in and make sure that uh, they're putting their people where their money is. It's like, let's do it.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else on that or any other project updates? Okay. Let's move along then to our agenda. Bridget, you got the first topic here with the reference distro discussion for
I,
KubeCon.
I
So please.
yeah, I just added one because I know I missed the last meeting. Sorry about that. I was on vacation, but I see that we did, and maybe Almiko, if you want to kind of talk through what you put in as the proposed maintainer session, and we think, I mean, it should get accepted, hopefully, but then what we would want to cover based on what we discussed, either last time or in our prep for the maintainer session. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to grab, let's see. I'm going to grab a
And
copy.
oh, I see that you had another topic that I didn't realize we hadn't moved it down yet. So we
No,
could talk
it's
about
okay.
that other topic first as well.
No,
Um,
we got plenty of time, so we're
oh,
good.
okay, great,
Yeah.
fantastic, thanks.
Okay, so we can start with this. That's fine. Yeah, I just didn't move
Okay.
it down because
Oh yeah,
I'm running slow as well. So
yeah.
okay,
Well,
so this was something we've talked about a lot over the last, like year, maybe more, is like, as we're getting deeper and deeper into the testing stuff, kind of promoting this idea of more formalized Kubernetes distributions, right? And so I thought it would be cool to have a talk about this, or even like, like a panel about it, like just a discussion about what this is. And I really wanted to avoid, even put it in the abstract here, like we're not trying to define a new standard for how to do distributions. We're not trying to create some enhancement that will boil the ocean or whatever for the Kubernetes world. Like what I would love to do, and what I'm hoping that this panel will help with, is to kind of advance the conversation and to excite people in the community. Because like for me, and I'm just going to speak personally here, like the notion that we've been talking about, Kubernetes distributions and how we can bring those into the testing work we're doing, that's just part of it. I think another big part of it that I really resonates for me is when Walter talks about, us being able to define some of the reference implementations, like just even the simple notion of like, a 3 control plane standard, cluster, right? Like, and what that brings to like, your environment and everything. And so I would love to have this wider discussion about like what does it take to get Kubernetes kind of to the point that like Linux is at now, right? Where we look at the Linux ecosystem and there's like distributions for everything. Like I can get an edge distribution that just works on my little ARM device or my Raspberry Pi, all the way up to something that works on my like, high performance computing environment. I can get desktop versions of Linux. I can get them with, different window managers, blah, 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 whatever you need, right? And are we kind of getting to the point in the Kubernetes community where this could become more normalized for us, right? Where we could start to see an ecosystem evolve where people start to have a better understanding about like how do we build a Kubernetes distribution? In the same way that like there might be a great rift in the Linux community between apt and RPM or something like apt and dpackage or whatever. You might say, okay, well, in the Kubernetes world, maybe like some distributions use Helm and other ones don't, and what I'm kind of curious is like, how do we create that fertile environment for that discussion? How can we help push that discussion forward or promote that discussion? And so, what I'm hoping is that this panel that we're doing, that we'll get into these questions. We'll talk about what it can give us and what having this type of infrastructure or having this type of community structure, what we could get from it as a Kubernetes community, and like what would be the meaningful advances to that, and then also talk about the negative sides of it too. Talk about like where this has gone off the rails. We have great history in the, looking at the history of Linux and everything and Linux distributions, we have a lot of knowledge that we could learn from. So like my hope is like, can we tap into that? Can we bring some of that energy to the Kubernetes community? And then, can we leverage that for the kind of testing work we want to do and everything? So I hope, I don't know if that fits what you were looking for, Bridget, but that's just kind of off the top of my dome, kind of where I'm
Yeah,
coming from.
that's great. And I love the oblique XKCD reference. And I do think there's a lot to discuss there. Walter. Walter, your hand is up.
Are you double muted?
Yes, I'm just having a hard time unmuting because apparently my computer's being slow. All right, sorry about that. I love it. I mean, I've also been pushing for it, so I think Elmiko would be a little bit unhappy with me if I didn't, but I do actually love it. I will also say, I would like to actually have a POC proposal at the beginning of the new year. I think I already warned Elmiko and Bridget, but let me pitch. Cloud Provider GCP is not in the state I would like it to be in, and I would like to actually see if we can lay at least a trail. We've been talking about this now for a couple of KubeCons. I think we have a initial idea of where we would at least one path we'd like to try out. And so I think that I can actually put together a couple of folks to actually work on this on the Cloud Provider GCP. But before we begin that, I'd actually like to have those folks come here and kind of present sort of a more, I don't know if formal is the wrong word, but a more formal version of the, we're going to try using COPS, we're going to try XYZ and see if we can, use that to have, there's an old last known good that I can try and find and put into this doc, but that's an old SIG Cloud Provider idea on some of how we can run the testing with the idea that we take the last known good version of KK, we pair it with we take the last known good version of the cloud provider, we pair it with the most modern build of KK, we bring it up, we run all the tests on it, right? And this is a good way of determining whether the KK changes that have just gone in work with each cloud provider. And so I would love to have us do a POC for that and sort of generate that recipe with everyone else looking over our shoulder and advising if they have any concerns with the POC towards getting that. And I think if we can get that started, that'll give us a great opening to the KubeCon talk and sort of show that we're not just coming up with designs. We are actually trying to actively move things forward. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly, quick change of topic, low-level topic, same broad topic, is one of the things distros need is upgrades. And, upgrading Kubernetes, as many of us are aware, is not always simple or easy, right? So my general thought is there are at least four upgrade levers that we need to think about. And we need to think about who pushes those levers. My general feeling is that if we're open source, it is whoever installed the cluster that should be pushing those levers, right? So it's not even though we are the cloud provider team, I don't think that the general distro should be cloud provider does the upgrades. It should be, here are the upgrade levers, you installed it, you get to upgrade it. But I do want folks to think about, we need to be able to upgrade the Kubernetes control plane components, Kube API server, Kube scheduler, Kube controller manager. I think that's one lever. I think we need a separate lever to upgrade etcd, or if we ever get to the point of having etcd alternative, the etcd alternative. We need a lever for the cloud provider specific upgrade components, so CCM, and anything else that might go along with it. And then we need a node upgrader. And we may even want to think about what is the model. I mean, you know, I come from GKE. I've been on GKE for 9 years, so I may be a little tainted, and please excuse me. But, you know, I tend to think in terms of node pools. That's not obviously the only way we can think about these things. But I think we need to, you know, think about how do we allow it to be easy, especially in these days of ML clusters where, you know, the model providers want to get 1,000, 10,000 node clusters. I don't want to try and explain to someone, oh, we want you to upgrade one node at a time, right? So I think these are things that we're going to have to think through at some point. And with that, I will stop talking.
I like, you know, +1, Walter. Like, I really appreciate what you're talking about there. And yeah, I love the thinking and, you know, kind of the energy that's going into it from your side as well. I'm totally in favor of seeing a POC and everything. And I think, was it Joe who presented the least known good stuff all those years ago? Like, I'm like so happy to see that coming, because that's like, that least known good testing is like something I feel like we had back in the OpenStack days, and we did a lot of that kind of stuff. And I feel it's been sorely missing in the Kubernetes world. So yeah, like, I'm super excited to see any sort of POC around that kind of stuff. Does anybody else have questions or comments about, you know, what we're talking about, or what Walter just said, or anything really?
Can we talk more about the POC? What exactly is it? Sorry, I don't attend the meeting so frequently, so I don't have context about like what we have talked before, but I'm super interested in this.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
Sure.
please, Walter.
So
You want to
the general POC, and I think we're likely to present something more real at the next meeting. So I'm going to just do broad high-level strokes. But if you look at, for instance, how do you install a, you know, a lot of people have, you know, when they first get into Kubernetes, sort of miss the fact that there are no APIs in Kubernetes that talk about clusters or nodes. And let me be a lot of people will go, wait, what do you mean there's no API that'll talk about nodes? There's a node object, and there is a node object. On the other hand, if you create a node with a node object, nothing happens, right? You don't get a node just because you create a node resource. So at some level, there's no standardized way to create a cluster. And, you know, one of the examples of this I will say is the first attempt at creating a cluster that all the cloud providers ever had was this horrific shell script called kubeup, which oddly, I think the only cloud provider left that actually does kubeup is Google with Cloud Provider GCP, and I really would like kubeup to die. So. But on top of that, there's COPS, there's kubeadm, there's Cluster API, and then EKS, AKS, GKE, and my guess is OpenShift then all have their own proprietary versions of all of these things. And so when we pulled all of, and now I'm quoting El Mico, when we pulled all of the cluster, the cloud provider code out of Kubernetes core, that meant that Kubernetes core no longer had a way to bring up cloud provider specific clusters. So most of the testing nowadays is done with something like kind. But there are tests that cannot be run that way. And so we would like there to be a standard mechanism just for SIG Cloud Provider on how you bring up a cluster so that our tooling can bring up a cluster in any cloud provider and then go run the tests that are configured to be able to run against that flavor of Kubernetes. If we've already done that, I think at some point we're going to want to just acknowledge that there is now a standard way to bring up Kubernetes, and other people are likely to want to use that. Having said that, and now I'm going to, quote my co-TL, Joel, I don't want to build that tool, right? I do not want to have yet another standard for, installing Kubernetes. And so we know the right answer isn't KubeOp. I suspect that the right answer is COPS, but even in this group, I think there is some question if that's the right answer or not. But I think what we should do is take one, and I mean, since I'll be trying to do cloud provider GCP, we're likely to pick COPS, but this is a proof of concept. We'll try and get it up and running, and we'll try and get LKG working with KK core, and we'll see what problems we hit, bring it back, and everyone will take a look, and we'll decide, okay, so you guys did COPS, you've made a couple of standards things, and here are the adjustments we'd like to make. Maybe we decide to go with cluster API. Maybe we decide that 3 is not the right number of control plane nodes. There are things we can certainly look at, but the basic idea behind the proof of concept is we've been talking about it for a year. It's very difficult to get past the what's the opposite of momentum? The inertia, overcome the inertia, and actually start getting stuff done. So I'd like to get it going, find out what the problems are, and then see if we as a community can start making this, converge on either the POC or some adjustment to the POC and start making it everywhere. That was a very did that answer the question?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Walter. But isn't in a cloud provider GCP, is KOps already working? Am I understanding correct?
You were breaking up for me because my computer is overloaded. I'm sorry. Can I have you repeat the question?
Yeah. I prefer to get your answer. It's great. But another question. Am I understanding correct that in a cloud provider GCP, the KOps test is already kind of working? It is already in a state that we want, or there's still work needs to be done?
There is a KOps that will bring up KK. It will bring up a cluster with known good of AK, but that's not, and that's a useful start. It's not the way it's normally done. I thank you for the KOps to make that work. That is one thing that we need, but there are others. So, this is why I talk about who.
Is Walter breaking up a great deal for everyone else?
Yeah, Walter's breaking up a lot.
Good.
Walter, you're frozen now.
GCP example.
Walter, we're getting 1 out of every 5 syllables, and you're frozen.
I think Walter stopped talking 30 seconds ago, and it's just coming through.
Maybe just to respond to Yifei, and I hope I said your name correctly. Please tell me if I did not. Part of the issue here is that, yes, we may have a KOps test for GCP currently, but one of the things that we've been talking about in this SIG for better than a year now is how we can do more testing across different cloud providers. And in order to get to the level where we have really solid standard testing across those cloud providers, one of the things that we've identified is that it would be really useful for us to have a singular way or an abstracted way to look at how to deploy a cluster on AWS, how to deploy a cluster on GCP, how to deploy a cluster on Azure, and then make that as a pattern that more cloud providers who are getting into this community can participate with the ultimate goal being that if you look at the cloud provider tests that exist currently in KK, many of them have, there's a lot of skips if you're not running on GCP or you're not running on Azure or you're not running on AWS. Some of those skips are not evenly applied across all the tests. And so one of the things we've been talking about here is how can we create a testing infrastructure where we can better take a cloud provider with that cloud provider's specific components like the cloud controller manager, and then combine that with a standard set of tests that can run on top of anything. You can imagine the node lifecycle test, which is probably our basic test. Right now, when that node lifecycle test runs in KK, it has to call out to a specific shell script in order to delete a cloud instance in GCP to make the cluster, test work. In the future, we'd like to make that more abstracted so that every cloud provider could kind of bring their own methodology for completing the test. And then we could have a generic set of tests that could work across all the cloud providers. So part of the rationale for getting deeper into the idea of distributions is that, as one of the first consumers of the distributions, we would like to be able to go to the testing infrastructure and say, run these CCM tests on AWS, Azure, GCP, IBM Cloud, Equinix Metal, Nutanix, whatever kind of array of whatever matrix we have of cloud provider options. And by producing something that looks like a distribution and producing a methodology for recreating those distributions, I think we'll give a clear signal to the community of how new cloud providers can not only create the operators that are needed for their cloud, such as the controller manager, the CSI, CNI, whatever they need, and then how they can integrate their testing into the Kubernetes community. So that's kind of the grand picture if we're able to accomplish what we're talking about here. Does that help to kind of fill things in a little bit, Yifei? Did we also lose Yifei?
Not sure.
But no, I believe
Maybe
it.
it wasn't clear there was a question, but
I think she nodded.
Oh, okay.
oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
you
can't
did a
see all
good
the
job,
camera.
Almiko.
Cool. Appreciate it, Yifei. Thank you. Okay, great question. Any other questions about this topic? Okay, I'm going to move on. Oh, you go
I
ahead.
have related to both POC and also just the idea of distros in general. It kind of sounds like we have enough material here that we might want to consider not just a panel, but perhaps also an off-cycle Kubernetes blog post. Because it looks like we have enough detail here that this is the sort of place where we could share more in detail that isn't just a discussion, which is vibrant and exciting, but also we can put more detail into a blog post, I think. And that could also spark conversations in advance of KubeCon so that we could get people's questions to answer. I see Jesse is either nodding or listening to great music, but I'm going to go with he's nodding and agreeing with me.
Yeah, that would be a very offbeat, eclectic jazz. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. I like the idea of putting something out to drive the thinking so that then when people kind of come and engage, then there's a little bit more, kind of an informed position. Love that idea. Great idea.
Okay, so maybe we could start working on like a blog post that we could try to get out like a month before KubeCon or something like that. So if we shoot to get a blog post out at the end of February or something like that might serve us well. And or do you think Bridget
Yeah,
or Jesse,
I
should
just
we
want
cut
to
it
look at the
closer to-
Kubernetes. I want to look at the Kubernetes release cycle really quick because I think that probably is fine. But let's look real quick at the Kubernetes release cycle before we pick an exact target, because I don't want to try to put one in when they're very busy with like Docs freeze or something.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, yeah, like yeah, let's do it. Let's work on let's work on like a collaborative blog post, and I'm happy to start it off, and then like Bridget, yourself, and Jesse and Walter, and anyone else from the community, maybe we could just solicit some input and whatnot, make sure everyone's questions are answered, and yeah, have something kind of exciting, and yeah, hopefully that'll seed the conversation that we have then at KubeCon. And I wanted to mention as well about the panel. I think last time, Bridget, you did a great job of kind of hosting, and I think your experience was definitely welcome. But maybe this time, like, I could host or someone else could host, and
Sure.
and
That
then I
sounds
can just
great.
and then I can just ask you tons of questions.
Mix it up. I love it.
Cool. So that's something where I might reach out to you to kind of pick your brain about how to level myself up a little bit in that domain.
It's just load balancing, but
It's just
conversational.
load balancing that. All right, cool. All right, any other questions or comments about the POC or about distributions or the talk for KubeCon? I did have one other topic that I wanted to get to. So yeah, I almost want to just go through the least known good testing slide deck again because it's such a cool idea. I mean, like for Kubernetes, I think it'll be good. Okay, well then I'm going to move on to the topic that I had added a little while ago because we have someone, a contributor from the community who is posted something for us to review, and I was looking at it, and it seems like a good idea to me, but I just wanted to run it by folks here to see if there would be like if there's anything else we need to do or whatnot. So this person, let me see, Calmcart has proposed a change to add this label to allow users to add this label to nodes so that the nodes could be skipped for the CCM lifecycle controller. And one of the use cases they point out here is that they might have some bare metal machines that they've added to a cluster, that aren't part of the cloud controller, and could they exclude it? Yeah, Walter, please. Do we already have this feature and I just didn't know about it? Or?
Not aware of it, but I'm going to say that I think it seems like a nice idea. I think this has to be a cap.
Okay. I was starting to get into like, we need to document this if we're going to do it. We can't just, because this is the PR is just by itself, like just stuffing this in there. But okay. So that was one of the things I was going back and forth on was like, could we just update a cap that's already there?
Oh,
Or,
I mean, there is a cap that we have that I don't know.
none of them
There
really
isn't.
looked appropriate to me was the problem.
Yeah, I mean, there is one that is the annotations for like failure zones, and this is kind of at a high level. If you squint a lot, looks kind of like the failure zones annotations, but
Like
yeah,
this cloud provider labels to GA, like was one of the closest, but this was about making the zones and whatnot into
yeah, like I said, this is the failure zones cap that I was thinking. I was like, if you
right.
squint a lot, it kind of looks like this, but
Right, but it doesn't really fit. And then I was looking at maybe the cloud controller just the standard ones because I thought maybe there would be something here about it, but I don't know. So like you'd like to see just a new cap for this basically.
I mean, I think we can point them at the existing annotations because it is basically it should follow the basic pattern of labels that we see in promoting cloud provider labels.
Yeah.
But I definitely think this needs to be a cap. It's going to impact quite a few other SIGs, and I think all the cloud providers need to be aware of it. So, yeah, we may want to think about like, is there an easy way? Like, should this be in the cloud provider API? Is there an easy way to turn it off? Does this need to be honored in various controllers? Yeah. I mean, having said that, like, I also want to be clear. Sometimes write a cap is used as a brush off, and I am not trying to do a brush off on this.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I just, I wasn't sure, like a new cap, like I was trying to figure out a cap we could fit it into just to update, but we don't really have anything like this, unfortunately. So,
Maybe it won't seem like as much of a brush off as if we say we'd like to see a cup and we're happy to help you write it because we have experience writing cups.
Yeah, and I'm not. You may have already put it in there, but I do think we should probably reference the existing cloud provider annotations one, because I think it is close enough that it can kind of act as a template.
All right. Well, I can keep communicating with Calm Card here and maybe help them get a coup. I did ask them to write some documentation before. It looks like they might have. Oh, this is that. Okay. All right. I'll keep working with this. Thanks. Appreciate the input. And yeah, like I wasn't sure about if we needed to go all the way to cap level or not, but that makes sense to me. I tend to like caps as documentation, and I think we should probably write more of them, but you know, the amount of effort it takes sometimes to get them through, I know turns people off from it. So okay. Anybody have questions or comments about that topic? Okay. That is the end of our regular agenda topics. So we'll check out the triageable issues. I think there was one that got bumped back to. We got two. Yeah, this hybrid cloud native support got bumped back into needs triage. And I know we like this topic, but we haven't been able to get something going on it. And this is a new one to me. Batch update. Oh no, we did. This one is ongoing discussion. So this is the one where we're not sure. I guess like we don't know if there's a way to actually batch this. So here's the question. Are we going to just deny or not accept the triage on this? This was the one about batching node updates, but then we were like, okay, how would you do that? And there was like no real answer to it. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the hybrid cloud one. This one, the batch node update. Okay, so
So are they looking for transactions here?
well, so what their idea was is that, they were looking at this code and they're saying this update function will only update one node at a time, which when you have a lot of nodes, I guess I don't even think it was the timing that it was the number of API requests. So they were proposing a way to reduce the number of API requests by figuring out if we could batch together all of the updates to happen at once. But as we started to discuss this more, um, we don't have there is no API that allows you to do like a batch update multiple records at once, right? So like the API server just doesn't support this.
I mean, etcd doesn't support it, so
Right. So I guess the question is, should we just close this?
I mean, so the one thing I will say is it would be interesting to understand if this is a cloud provider specific request, because if the request, is for Amazon, sorry, uh, if the request is, hey, I've got limited quota and I would like to be able to do a list rather than individual gets, we could change the controller to do a list and then fire off updates, go routine, fire off updates against the Cube API server, whatever. But if that's the request, there may be opportunity to fine tune that particular controller for Amazon by having a different API against EC2. We don't necessarily need transactions or even a batch write to Kube API server if the request is just, I'd like to be able to do a list call against EC2.
Yeah, just want to we actually already do batching on the EC2 side. So
yeah, so I mean, yeah, maybe could you take a look at this then, Kirtan?
sure.
And just,
yeah, I can. Yeah,
I mean, if
I can update that. I mean, of
yeah.
course, it's not there in all the Kubernetes versions. We have, I think, we released only for. Not that it can't be done. It's just a bit didn't backport to older Kubernetes versions. But yes, I can definitely respond to the ticket.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
I'll put a CC here, Kirtan, just so you can get.
Yeah, but to be clear,
sure.
that's just on the cloud provider API side.
Right.
If we want to do anything on the API server, we're going to have to pull in API machinery. And I will tell you, having just had a chat with the API machinery leads, I don't think there's a lot of appetite for putting transactions in, because there isn't enough call for it yet.
Okay. Yeah, so I won't close it yet. Give Kirtan some time to check it out, and if it'll come up again, because we're not going to clear the triage on this. So, okay, but yeah, to the notion of a cloud provider specific or a general issue, it seems like what they want is that they want this to be batched, which is like for every cloud provider. But I don't, yeah, there's no way to do it basically. Okay, the other one was that I saw got blipped off again was this hybrid cloud native support. So some way to support allowing multiple cloud controller managers to run in the same instant or the same cluster or something like that. We weren't able to arrive at any sort of agreement about how this could be done. Although I did note that I think Sergey was the person pushing. Sergey is continuing to stay up on this. So I guess the question is, as a SIG, do we have any notion about do we want to do anything with hybrid cloud support at this point?
So I actually think this interestingly plays against an earlier topic of conversation. So if we want to do hybrid cloud support, I think we'd need a better definition of what that actually meant. But if it's a single control plane managing nodes across multiple cloud providers, and for now, I'm going to assume that's what it means. One of the interesting questions you are going to get is, how do you determine which cloud provider in which cloud provider does a particular piece of workload run, right? And so I think you get some interesting problems on that, such as if you want actual concrete exclusionary, you get some interesting things that you want to be able to do. Like, you may want to do taints and tolerations, but now I want to be able to apply taints and tolerations in some sort of meaningful way. And I think each cloud provider does it differently. So, for instance, in GKE, the standard way of doing this, at least for the nodes, is you put the toleration on the node pool, and then the nodes inherit it. But that is a GKE specific solution. And I think, interestingly, if we start coming up with a more standardized way for open source, this should feed into that, right? Like, if we say we have standardized ways of dealing with groups of nodes, then now we can start looking at how do you do that. I also think you're going to get some interesting preferential systems that we may need to work with the scheduling team about, where we say, whether it's failure zones or whatever, we say, I would rather this ran in this cloud provider, but if there's no room available, then run in that one. And a lot of those are going to kick in. So I think it's an interesting problem. I think that we need to be involved in this, but I don't think that we can go it alone. That's my personal take.
Yeah, I look at this and I think if you scrolled back up to the top, I didn't look at the beginning of it, but this sounds strangely like an issue I remember triaging in SIG Network like 3 years ago. It's not the same one, but it feels like this has come up multiple times.
Oh yeah, I think this is
There's
one of
definitely older issues on a
Yeah.
similar topic. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those topics that goes back at least a few years, because I've been talking about this with people. The notion of like, if I have a cluster and half of it is on AWS and half of it is on GCP, like how do I do that, right? And yeah, like there's all sorts of questions around that. Walter, you just raise your hand, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry, I one bit I missed, but I wanted to let you finish. But the other thing I will say is I think that inevitably we're going to need controller manager sharding, which I think may be a thing that the API machinery team has been talking about and is looking into right now. But I mean, fundamentally, we're going to have to work out how to make sharding work, because presumably the controller manager needs to be aware is going to have to shard the resource type. So it should only be paying attention to nodes specific to that cloud provider. And then the other CCM should be doing the other shard. I mean, there are other ways of doing it, but I think fundamentally it's going to start looking a lot like the sharding stuff that API machinery wants to be doing right now. And so, and then there's going to be secondary effects that are going to kick in, because when it comes to doing service, you're going to need to do service for the workloads which happen to have been assigned to nodes that you control. And so there's going to be some interesting things about how we make the CCM aware of which resources it should be doing things for, which it shouldn't, and what we do when there are splits. So, I mean, for something like this service, I'm not sure what happens when there are pods running in both cloud providers and the service needs to bridge both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we just say that's not possible, or yeah?
Right. Like when you look at this problem from 10,000 feet up, you're like, oh yeah, all I want to do is just allow the CCM to pick the nodes that come from its cloud. And it's like, yeah, and then you get into these questions where it's like, what if you have a workload that's got 10 replicas and 5 of them are on provider A and 5 are on provider B, and you've got one service in front of them, and now you need to do a rolling upgrade that crosses the boundary between the, it's like once you get to that point, now it's like, all right, let's get the popcorn out and figure out how this actually works, All right, I'm just taking notes here. I'm going to form my thoughts into a better comment, because like I also think this is an interesting topic, but I think it's also like a complicated topic that's not going to get solved quickly. All right, we're nearing the end of our meeting here. Did anybody else have comments or questions about this one? Okay, well, I guess the last order of business is, I believe our next meeting is scheduled for the 31st, and I personally think we should cancel that meeting so that everyone can go have a nice New Year's Eve, if that's
I
something.
mean, I'll be on vacation, so I will not be at anything on the 31st.
You are already winning. Okay.
So the one after that. So no, let's not try to have a meeting on the 31st. That just seems unwise.
I know. Yeah. It's like, we're not doing that.
January 14th sounds like a perfectly cromulent day.
Absolutely. So next meeting is the 14th of January.
All right.
All right. Well,
great.
Have a good end of the year, everyone. So nice to see you all.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Yeah. Whatever it might be for you. We'll see you all in several weeks.
See ya.
Later, everybody.